This is this between us.
The number one podcast in the world.
This is
the JBU.Show featuring Austin,
from the Miller Talk Podcast,
Allan,
the American Sincerist,
and now your host,
Cam Allen.
All right. How's it going, everybody? My name is Chris, and this is the JBU.Show. And tonight, we're going to walk through some history. We're going to walk through some history involving the United States and the Arab nations, in particular, the Muslim nations, and or the Muslim-dominant nations, I suppose. And we're going to talk about how this all began, and in particular, how it all began for America. Do we have a problem with just endlessly meddling in the Middle East? I mean, if we look at just the last 50 years, sure. No question about it. Did this start in the last 50, 20, 30, wherever you want to place the needle, years? No. Did it start 100 years ago? No. As the title implies, this started in 1776. Those a little more familiar with their history will recognize the photo. Obviously, it's AI generated, but we'll recognize what the photo on the cover is supposed to be about. We're also going to look at Christians and Europeans, Westerners in general, and where it started there. We're going to cover both histories, and we're going to talk about that a little bit because, look, there's no doubt that what Trump has done has fractured the Republican Party. And really what it is that the crowd that is becoming increasingly paranoid and fervent about Israel is really making a lot of noise right now. As they were going to do anytime Israel came up again in the future, as if it was just going to magically disappear. And look, I'm on the side of America. I'm always on the side of America. I'm always on the side of the American people. Not necessarily Trump. But the fact is, Trump is our duly elected president. And while I have no problem criticizing Trump, I'm definitely not going to criticize American troops that are doing their job. And you're certainly never going to find me in the camp with a Dave Smith, for example. I noticed just before I got on air here, Dave Smith is trending because of going on Joe Rogan for the 9,000th time, and Ben Shapiro ripped into him. I'll play a couple clips here. There's probably some more regarding that. I really don't care. Let's play a clip here from Dave Smith on the Joe Rogan show so we can see what we're working with.
Over the last 25 years, we've spent close to $10 trillion on wars, you know, and they didn't tax the American people for that, because they know they couldn't tax us enough to pay. We would put an end to it. If they tried to raise everybody's taxes enough to come up with $10 trillion because we want to go fight regime change wars all over the Middle East, the American people would have been like, no, we're not doing that. But they didn't do that. They kept taxes where they were. I think they even cut some rates during those years, the top rates.
And brought in more money.
And then they borrowed the rest, and they still couldn't borrow enough, so they just print the money. And then essentially what happens is that the price of everything just goes up and up and up. And you just put more money into the system, and then people start looking around and going like, geez, why is the price of housing and healthcare and energy and childcare totally unaffordable? And the answer is because you're paying for the war in Iraq.
Okay, let's start with, God damn it. I didn't realize he was right in front of me there. Got to move him back to his correct location. There we go. Let's start with that claim right there. Blaming all of our financial woes on the war is a little disingenuous. That said, of course, the war cost a ton of money. Now, $10 trillion over the course of 20 years is like $500 billion a year. That's like not even a quarter of the U.S. budget. So it blatantly is not the cause of all of our budget downfalls. Aside from the fact we're 40 trillion in debt, not 10, it contributed, but it was not the entire cause. Second, nobody disagrees that the wars prior to this in Iraq and Afghanistan were abject failures for many reasons. There's a lot of people just like jumping to the conclusion, or rather just jumping to the end point here. They're being angry about an end point that hasn't happened. Am I happy that we attacked Iran? No, I'm not happy we attacked Iran. The president said, and look, I don't know whether it's true or not, but if it is true, it matters, that they were going to attack us. Now, for his own sake, it would have been smarter to wait for that, but more Americans would have died. There's no doubt about it. So, if later it does prove to be true that we had good intelligence, regardless of who it did or didn't come from, was the intelligence credible? Unlike WMDs in Iraq and all of those things, that they were in fact going to try to launch an attack on us because of negotiations, then we had no choice. Then it doesn't matter how I feel about it. This was Iran's move, not ours. We just decided to move first because it's the smart thing to do. If Iran wasn't going to attack us, well, that changes the story a little bit, and I would have to consider from there. But regardless, right now, the only thing we've done is launch a bombing campaign that's lasted, what are we on, day 4? The claim is it will take between 2 and 4 weeks. If it takes between 2 and 4 weeks, really not that much to be upset about. We can call it a failure or success based on, how things turn out in 5 years. But there's so many people putting the cart before the horse here. And that's what's really, I think, frustrating me. As well as the, abject denial that there is any reason whatsoever for this. When there are, in fact, many reasons, and one blatant reason that we can't ignore no matter how much we might not like it. And that, of course, is what the history we're going to get into is going to be about. But let me let Dave Smith finish here.
And nobody thinks about it like that. But that's really what's going on. They can't. So for all the young people who are coming out of college now, and they're like, I'm 150 grand in debt. I have a gender studies major degree.
None of which has to do with the war.
Or whatever, maybe something better than that. But they got an English degree or something, and they're working at DoorDash, and the average house is going for 600 grand. And they're like, what am I possibly going to do? It's like the reason why these kids are all demanding socialism, at least on the left, is because, what else are you going to do? How do you even... But the reason why that is the case is because your government decided to spend trillions of dollars on blown-up brown countries, and in some cases then rebuilding them to blow them up again.
All right.
I mean, this is the actual cost of the thing. And I feel like it's
yes, I'm taking
almost nobody outside
camera.
of the Ron Paul libertarians, the Austrian economics guys.
I've actually had people
almost nobody
about
else ever makes this connection. That it's this is the deal. You can't be a world empire without having a central bank that can print money for you, because otherwise it just doesn't work. Resources are finite and you'll run out of them. And so you can't do that without having this monetary system. But the cost of this monetary system...
Okay, hold on. Resources are in fact finite, but we have not come anywhere close to reaching their limit. Not even close. So yes, resources are finite in the sense that there is only so much of each element on Earth. However, everything goes through a cycle. So even when we burn oil, for example, and convert it to energy, all of the elements that were in that oil still exist. And eventually become oil again or something else, right? It all goes through it obviously doesn't directly go back to oil, but it all goes through cycles. And so not only have we not reached the limit yet, but even once we hit that limit, it's still a cycle. So we could theoretically, and not literally probably, but theoretically, be at that limit permanently. But we're not even close to that limit. And so while things are in fact finite, that is not any of the limiting factors at the moment. Nor has it been in all of human history so far. Aside from that, he is literally blaming every possible financial woe that the United States has gone through due to a plethora of stupid decisions on the war. And look, I don't support the Iraq-Afghanistan war. I didn't at the time. I don't now. But again, he stated a number, $10 trillion. That is 1/4 of the debt. So what about the other 3/4? Further, it was a 20-year war. We spent $10 trillion. That's $500 billion a year. That's about 1/4. That's about 1/8 of the U.S. budget yearly. 1/8. What about the other 7/8? And actually, it's technically what about the other 11/8 because of the amount we borrow on top of that, primarily for healthcare. At least since Obamacare, it has almost all gone to healthcare. And when I say it's gone to healthcare, I mean it's gone to insurance companies, administrators, and fucking hospitals. None of that matters. None of that's relevant. The reason you are in debt because you decided to take out a $150,000 loan to get a degree in philosophy is because of the war, according to Dave Smith.
Is that prices always go up and up and up and up, and that rigs the entire economy against the working class and the middle class in favor of the rich. It's just the way it is. When the value of assets is going up and up and up and up, that's great if you own stuff. That's great if you own stuff and you're selling it. If you got $1 billion in the bank, inflation is your best friend. But if you're on a fixed income or you're a working class person, it just destroys you.
He's not wrong about that, generally speaking. But he is absolutely full of it on the war being the exclusive cause.
Times.
Right. Let's hear what
Smith is.
Ben Shapiro had to say about Dave Smith, because I'm sure Dave Smith at some point in that interview says something about Ben Shapiro. With this clip, I agree with everything that Ben says. I don't particularly like Ben Shapiro either. Really not one of my favorite people. Really not, I think he's a smart guy. I think that he gets some things right. I think he gets a lot of things wrong. I think he's a little too old school conservative for me, but I don't know.
Now, I know that Dave Smith is super duper excited that his name was mentioned here. And he's sitting there shouting at his TV screen in his basement, "Debate me, bro!" To which I answer, nah. I don't debate with trolls who claim that America is the biggest terrorist state in the world because that is idiotic. I didn't debate the Lyndon LaRouche followers who sat in Harvard Square carrying anti-war cardboard signs back in the day. And I feel no necessity to debate a completely intellectually dishonest interlocutor who spends his days cribbing Noam Chomsky and then immediately retreats to his pose of ignorant comedian every time he is confronted with a fact. Dave Smith is the kind of fellow who says that Donald Trump should be in jail for life as a war criminal, legitimizes every single scurrilous figure on the internet from Nick Fuentes to Candace Owens, and then demands that everyone treat him as though he is some sort of honest, worthy intellectual opponent. He's not.
Look, again, I don't like Ben Shapiro, and whether you do or don't, that's a pretty honest take on Dave Smith. Dave Smith does a really good job at coming across as genuine. But 90% of what he says is just full of it. He says a lot of like normal, middle of the road, nobody disagrees with things. And then immediately goes into a rant like he did just a minute ago on something that is entirely ridiculous. Like that, all of America's financial woes are because of the war in Iraq.
It doesn't matter, it turns out, how many times you appear on Joe Rogan's show or how many times you hide behind your title of comedian who holds the Guinness Book of World Records for fewest jokes told, or how many times you spew puerile analogies that demonstrate nothing but unbelievable, willful ignorance of the nature of war. I'm sorry, but you hate the country if you say America is the worst terrorist organization in the world. You just do. To make that argument, you have to deliberately obscure the difference between actual terrorists who actually are seeking deliberately to kill innocent people in the name of politics, not collateral damage, deliberately seeking to kill innocent people, and nation states who are seeking to avoid civilian casualties, often while fighting those actual terrorists, which of course is the point for people who hate America, to reduce America to the level of its enemies in order to uphold those enemies. That is the goal. Now, I know that Dave Smith is super duper excited that his name was mentioned here, and he's sitting there shouting at his...
Apparently this just... Oh, it goes into the other one. I got you. Anyway. I can't disagree with any of that. Again, not a huge Ben Shapiro fan, but I can't disagree with any of that. So, here's the thing. We can get right into the history right now, or we can talk about a few other things. There's a lot of propaganda going around, and a lot of, like, painfully just absurd propaganda going around. And unfortunately, it's being eaten up by a lot of people in America, both left and right. And then, of course, we have our usual American problems on top of that. And, like, this James Tallarico, Jasmine Crockett thing, let's just get that out of the way real fast, because it's stupid and I don't care. Jasmine Crockett claims that there was cheating in Texas yesterday because there was apparently some confusion with Democrat polling places because Democrats didn't show up, and that's the way it works in Texas. In order to have a polling place, your party, for a primary, your party has to actually be there to run the poll. And it's primaries. Who cares? From what I understand, and I didn't look because, again, I don't care. They both suck. But from what I understand, Tallarico won by a landslide. So the marginal amount of votes that might have got turned away at a single polling place for a primary poll wouldn't have made a difference. What scares me is how many people still, left and right, obviously this is primarily the left, but there are people on the right too, in 2026 are convinced by a complete charlatan like this. He's just a smooth-talking grifter. I mean, that's all. I hate using that term, but it applies too much. He apparently at one point tweeted, "White skin gives me and every white American immunity from the virus, but we spread it wherever we go, through our words, our actions, and our systems. We don't have to be showing symptoms, like a white hood or a Confederate flag, to be contagious." I think he thought this was like a deep thought. I really do. I think he believed that. Liberal Americans, what are you doing? Do you hate yourselves that much? Do you really hate this country that much? And if you do hate yourselves in this country that much, why should we listen to you at all? Why should we give you a vote at all? Why would we give a vote to people that hate the country? Not who's in charge of it, the country. What it stands for, what its values are, and all the rest. I realized really quickly that list could be very long, so that's why I just said and all the rest. But, sorry, it's hot as hell in here. I gotta get the air on. Anyway, it just, what are you doing? It says it's being taken out of context, according to this guy. But, unless there's context here, yeah, I don't see it. Oh, wait.
Who support deporting. How do you balance your feelings toward ICE versus the people you would represent who support deporting undocumented immigrants? You have 30 seconds.
So my family is from the border. My mom grew up in Laredo, Texas.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. And this is what he does every time. Anytime he's asked a question, he relates it to a personal story. Why? Because that's what he's trained to do. That's what a trained politician does. Kind of like a trained monkey. He's white, so don't get mad at me. Well, get mad, I don't care, but just scream into the void because I don't care. Regardless. And then he goes on and spews a bunch of nonsense that doesn't answer the question. It's just general platitudes. Like when he says, my God, from the Bible, he gives me 2 commandments in the Bible. Love my God and love thy neighbor. Okay, last I checked, God gave Moses 10 commandments. And the Bible is full of hundreds of commandments. They just aren't directly called commandments. And by the way, love thy neighbor, not one of them. It is, as far as like indirectly, it's pretty clear that the Bible says that. But it's not actually a commandment. It's certainly not one of the 10. You're not supposed to covet your neighbor, or your neighbor's wife, rather, or anything that your neighbor has. But a lot of things, even if we accept love thy neighbor is technically in the Bible, because it is, technically, there's a lot of things that come before love thy neighbor. Like, love thy God, love thy parents, and what is it? Respect and honor thy parents. And then your family. Like your immediate family and your friends, and then your neighbor. But whatever. Who cares, right?
I feel like Texans understand this issue of immigration more so than people in other states because we live with it, both the benefits and the challenges. So what I've said is that
See what I mean? See what he just did there? I'm sorry, I talk so much that I'm going to play it back a little bit.
Deporting undocumented immigrants. You have 30 seconds.
So my family is from the border. My mom grew up in Laredo, Texas. I feel like Texans understand this issue of immigration more so than people in other states because we live with it, both the benefits and the challenges. So what I've said is that our southern border should be like our front porch. There should be a giant welcome mat out front and a lock on the door. We can welcome.
Okay, what does that actually mean? Nothing. It means nothing at all. Because our southern border is not a front porch. And in fact, we have to deal with real security concerns, like cartels and terrorists. It means nothing.
Immigrants who want to live the American dream. We can build a pathway to citizenship for those neighbors who have been here making us richer and stronger, and we can keep out people who mean to do us harm.
How can we do that? He literally just said both what the left wants to hear and what the right wants to hear, while offering zero explanation on what he would do or how. But whatever. again, I don't care. It's a Democrat primary. They're both liars and they both hate this country. But Tallarico scares me a little bit because so many people still in 2026 are convinced by the smooth-talking preacher. I'm not sure if he's ever even specified where or when he was a preacher, but whatever. I'm sure he was somewhere. Let's see. Donald Trump apparently, since we mentioned it, Donald Trump apparently truthed this a while back. We have two options: deport every single third world immigrant, illegal alien, and America-hating visa holder, or surrender your nation the way the United Kingdom have and watch your society collapse in the coming years. It's almost like the goal and the opinion hasn't changed at all. Leftists just think it has, or claim it has. This is from November 30th, 2025, to be clear, so ignore the guy that posted it saying breaking. Now, let's get back to the Iran thing, okay? Before we get into the history itself. This is why we're going to go through the history. Because people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who I am very proud to say I have been consistent on since day one. I have never been a fan of her in the Republican Party. I have condemned her many, 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 many times over. Like when she was shouting through Biden's State of the Union address. And I have been very consistent, and I appreciate that, because I knew someday she was going to become useless like this. And when I say useless, I don't mean not useful to the cause. I mean she never believed in conservative values to begin with. If your church leaders and elected leaders are telling you the way to bring Jesus is by killing innocent children of innocent foreign people you've never met in a foreign land you've never been to, then you are believing the lies of wolves dressed in sheep's clothing. Implying that this picture, which is actually from Indonesia, is burial of the school children that were allegedly bombed in Iran 2 days ago. We still have no idea where that bomb came from, let alone that it killed anybody. No confirmation. And I only say that, I'm inclined to believe that they did die. I'm not really arguing that point. However, I never saw a single photo with a body, which is pretty uncommon in these situations, especially in the immediate aftermath, online. But either way, the claim of how many died, the fact that they were all school children, schoolgirls in particular, as if Islamists give a shit about girls, and that it was an American and or Israeli bomb, all comes from the IRGC. Despite that, people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, the Hodge twins, who I have lost all respect for, especially once I found out that they're posting contradictory things on Facebook versus on X just to boost their profile. Fuck them. Done. No credibility whatsoever anymore. But you also have all of the mainstream media. They reported on this for the first 24 hours as if the IRGC story was credible, accepting it as fact. Same with 500 Americans died in Iranian strike. Yeah, according to the Iranians. According to American intelligence, who actually has a track record of telling the truth, or at least being far more accurate, it was 3. If we bombed the school. I don't believe we did. The last time we missed a target by that much was World War II. But if we did, accidents do happen. It is still a war. And I still won't condemn our soldiers because it happened. Because I know damn well they didn't shoot a missile at school children on purpose. And fuck anybody that is claiming otherwise. Seriously. Or even implying otherwise. It's just nonsense. On the other hand, the campaign is going well. We're going to get into the history now after this because you kind of need to know the history before we start calling out some of these other people. But before we do that, the campaign is going well. A video this morning was released by the Pentagon showing the taking out of one of Iran's last naval ships. Absolutely incredible. The destruction from this torpedo is astonishing. First of all, it's the first torpedo kill since World War II, and that's kind of cool. But just, this is a naval vessel. Very heavy. Watch how it lifts the entire boat out of the water. It strikes it in the rear, lifts the whole boat out of the water. Watch this. This is insane. You can see it splits the boat right here. Whole boat comes out of the water. And obviously, that is a kill shot. And it was a U.S. submarine that scored this hit. I'm going to let it play one more time because it's just damn impressive. I'm going to see if I can pause it right at the strike point. Fortunately, the camera's a little jittery. Look at that. You can see the big split right there. It's just absolutely incredible. Yeah. My buddy, who's a former Marine, just sent me a message asking about a particular story and what I know about it, but we'll get into that another time. There's been lots of incredible footage, of course, over the last couple days, including some strikes on American facilities that are unusual. It's not shocking. There's a lot of, every single time Iran does get a successful hit on an American or allied target, of course, there's hundreds of people online trying to jump on it. Hundreds of various, big figures trying to jump on it as propaganda. America's crumbling, can't keep out these cheap drones, etc. None of it's true. We're not bleeding ourselves dry. We have plenty of missiles. We're not spending $3 million for every $50,000 drone. We are spending a lot. Don't get me wrong, but it's not that ridiculous. Yeah. Anyway, let's watch this. This is Tehran. Those are most likely strikes from 2,000-pound bombs. See if there's anything else worth seeing here. Here's a Tomahawk cruise missile in flight. So these are some merchant marines that shared this video of a Tomahawk cruise missile flying by the ship. That's pretty cool. Look at that. Absolutely crazy. Another one. That's wild. That's wild. That's absolutely wild. Let's see what else we got here. What are we? Hold on, I gotta make sure this isn't inappropriate before I show you guys. Alright, I can show you. That's funny. By the way, these come from Funker530 military community on Facebook. He's trying to waddle away because the wash from the blades is probably blowing that all over him. Funny. Alright, drone footage release. Israeli drone force coming to contention online today. On one side of the aisle, there's a large group of people that believe the strike hit a decoy aircraft on the ground, while IDF claims to have destroyed Iran's Mi-17 transport helicopters. The reason the video is in question is due to lack of effects on target immediately following the strike. You would expect to see the rotors moving or some other form of visible damage on the aircraft itself for a strike of this magnitude, but that doesn't seem to be the case in this instance. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Okay. Oh. This took me to a third-party website, but that's okay. Let's see it. Yeah, that is a little weird that the rotors aren't moving. I'm trying to think what that could be as a decoy, though. It's also possible, too, that, and it kind of looks like maybe they hit near it rather than on it, and so you see a lot of concrete and stuff flying around. But maybe it didn't actually hit the helicopter itself, and so that could be why. I don't know, but we also, of course, had 3 F-15 jets go down over the last day or two over Kuwait. All 6 American pilots thankfully ejected safely. But obviously this is a problem, right? It's interesting, they were all F-15s, which means there was an issue with the F-15 platform and apparently communication with one of the defensive missile systems. Now, it's important to note, Kuwait has missile systems that are not American. And so, most likely, it was these non-American interceptors that struck the F-15s. There was some sort of failed communication between a foreign interceptor equipment and our planes. it's still a problem and still something that should have been prevented. But it's also one that in a dynamic situation like that would be extremely hard to maybe not foresee, but to contend with, to deal with. So things happen. All 6 Americans lived. It's unfortunate that we lost 3 F-15s. Those are pretty old aircraft anyway. And now they'll just be replaced with more modern F-22s or F-35s. So a loss is a loss, but it's not the end of the world. And we learned whatever we learned from it, whether it was whosever interception system it was. Obviously, it'll have to be dealt with. Also, one more here, and then we'll move on to the history, but it just blows my mind watching how fast these missiles actually come in. Israeli defenses blocking out some missile attacks, but one slips through. It'll be right there, center screen. That one.
Oh my God! Yo! No way! No way! No way! Oh my God!
It's interesting to note how absolutely shocked they are. Not necessarily horribly surprised, but pretty shocked. Because American missile defense systems, which include Israeli missile defense systems, are really good. Israel gets pounded with more munitions than anybody. They've been pounded with more missiles than probably any country in history because of their more recent use. And yet, they're able to intercept the vast majority of them. And with fairly cheap missiles, which, by the way, yes, we used the same system. It was a joint collaboration effort. The Tamir missile, which is meant for smaller munitions and cheaper drones, they're only 50 grand a missile, which sounds like a lot. It's nothing. Compared to a Patriot or a THAAD that are more like $1 million a missile, but those are for intercepting much, much faster and serious ballistic missiles and at different ranges. Obviously, we don't want to be firing those at $50,000 drones.
Oh my God!
But it's fascinating
Holy
with
fuck.
how many munitions they get hit with.
Oh my God!
It's pretty unexpected.
Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God!
You guys are funny.
Oh my God! Oh my God! That's retarded! It actually hit right here.
The hell of a fireworks show, that's for sure. And it actually looks like right there. Watch. Right there. It looks like it did get intercepted. It just wasn't enough to quite throw it off course. Completely, anyway. That's wild. All right, let's get on to the actual point of tonight, shall we? Give me just a second here to get organized with the information that we need. And we will get started on tonight's story, which is the history of how we ended up here. All right. I wish I had a stinger for this. I should have a stinger for this, but I don't. Let me see if I have something that'll kind of work, just so I can find it later when I come back through. No. 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 Nope. Nothing. All right. Well, I am stingerless, but the claim that the Islamist movement, primarily starting with the Muslim Brotherhood in 1928, but we'll get more to that in a minute, bastardizing the religion, which is typically, claimed to be in response to Western meddling, essentially. And keep in mind, so Islamist, in the way that we use the phrase today, is basically people that have, according to the claim, people that have bastardized the religion, bastardized the Quran, and use it for their own purposes, essentially. The idea that they are supposed to kill infidels and all of this. But this goes back long before. This goes literally back almost as far as written history. The ideas like non-believers are to be killed, enslaved, or plundered, or at minimum required to pay some sort of tax to operate in peace, so long as it serves a Muslim purpose, like postponing war until they've achieved sufficient power. Like I said, it goes back all the way to the beginning. So the question then becomes, where did this start? Did it start with, because as we know, at least in modern history, there's been so much back and forth that it's hard to tell where this all began. Who attacked who? Why is this happening? Why do Muslims and Christians continue to have these problems? Let's start with the West in general. We'll get to America specifically here in a minute, but let's start with the West in general, because obviously that history goes back much farther. So let's start with the original caliphate, which goes all the way back to the 1st century. It's about 600 AD. The caliphate is essentially a singular unified leader or government of the Muslim world. So the Ottoman Empire, which included multiple Muslim dominant countries and multiple Muslim sects, 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 there's no way for me to say it without sounding like sex one way or another. That was the last Muslim caliphate, and that ended in 1924. Attempts have been made since, including in the 21st century, but so far, none have come to pass. Thank God. These practices and ideals of killing non-believers and expansion through conquest, they literally start right at the beginning. They are, in fact, teachings of the Quran, not just later bastardized versions by quote-unquote Islamists or radicals. So let's start with early Muslim expansion and where this actually began, because it actually began with Muslims attacking Christians. From 632 to about 750 CE, after Prophet Muhammad's death in 632, the Rashidun Caliphate, starting with Abu Bakr, launched rapid conquest, basically a Muslim leader, launched a bunch of rapid conquests. Muslim armies defeated the Christian Byzantine forces at key battles like Yarmouk in 636. They took Jerusalem in 638, because that used to be Christian land. Syria, Egypt, North Africa, and much of the Levant, all dominated by Christians, Mediterranean Christians. Regions that had been Christian under the Byzantine Empire for centuries at that point. They also conquered Sassanid Persia, later under the the Umayyads. I'm going to get a lot of these names wrong, of course, but I'll do my best. This continued into Spain in 711 CE. By the way, I know the CE, BCE, various ways of saying that offends some people. This is what, when I pulled these dates, this is what it said, and I copied and pasted the dates. So if that's offensive in some way, I don't know how, and I'm not trying to be. I'm just trying to be accurate. Anyway, so they continued, the Muslims continued conquering into Spain because of or sparked by the death of the Prophet Muhammad at 711, even towards France, and stopped at Tours Poitiers in 732. They were aggressive expansions that brought formerly Christian territories under Muslim control, often through military campaigns, framed partly as spreading Islam, but primarily it was just driven by empire building and tribute. The Abbasid Caliphate from 750 to 1258. Remember, Caliphate is just a Muslim rule, basically. It is a single unified government that controls the Muslim world. This Golden Age era saw Baghdad as the center of an Islamic power, with cultural and scientific flourishing. But by the 10th and 11th centuries, the Abbasid Caliphates lost real political and military control to regional powers. Fragmentation and Seljuk Turks in the mid-11th century. The Abbasids became figureheads. In 1055, the Sunni Seljuk Turks seized Baghdad, nominally serving the Caliph, but dominating the region. Seljuks pushed into Byzantine Anatolia, or what is modern-day Turkey, essentially, defeating the Byzantines at the Battle of Manzikert in 1071, opening Asia Minor to Turkish settlement and threatening Constantinople. They also took Jerusalem from the Shia Fatimid Caliphate, a rival caliphate in Egypt, around 1071-1073, imposing even harsher restrictions on Christian pilgrims. The Seljuk alarmed the Byzantine Empire Alexios Komnenos, who appealed to Western Europe for military aid against the infidel Turks. That plea set the stage for the Crusades. The Crusades are where modern-day revisionists, historians that hate America pretty much, that's where they like to start this history, because it seeks to paint the West in blood. And the reason for Muslims hating the West. They conveniently overlook everything that all of that history that we just went through prior, where Christians were living in an area, Jerusalem, North Africa, the Mediterranean, and Muslims just came and took it after the death of Muhammad. That was the first written down time that this happened. Now, if you think I'm blaming Muslims for all of this, I'm not. Wait till we get to the end. But according to the written history, it was started by Muslims attacking Christians and pushing them out of an area that we don't even recognize as belonging to Western Christians anymore, which would be the Southern Mediterranean, Middle East. But in fact, it was, all the way down to Jerusalem. But anyway, they like to start at the Crusades in the 11th through the 13th century, because if you start there, then it appears Christians attacked Muslims in their homeland, which was not their homeland. It was now, but it wasn't originally. Instead of the other way around, which is what actually happened. So Christians formed in Europe and just one day decided to go and steal land from poor minorities. That's the claim by these modern revisionist historians. Of course, Christians were the minority then and now. Europeans, even more so than that. But the Crusades were actually the Christian empire's response to centuries of brutal Muslim expansion and direct conflict over the Holy Lands. The Holy Lands are modern-day Israel and Palestine, of course. The First Crusade, which was 1096 to 1099, Pope Urban II called for it at the Council of Clermont in 1095, framing it as a holy war to aid Byzantine, reclaim Jerusalem, and secure pilgrimage routes. Crusaders, mostly French, Norman, and other Western Europeans, is it supposed to be Norman? Anyway, captured Jerusalem in 1099 in a brutal siege and massacre. They established 4 Crusader states, the Kingdom of Jerusalem, County of Edessa, and a few others along the Levant coast. Latin Christian outposts, essentially, in Muslim-held territory. So, this was all Christian territory. The Muslims then came through and conquered it. Pushed the Christians into Europe, further into Europe. The First Crusade was about trying to take the Holy Lands in Jerusalem back. They failed to take all of the land back, but they took a few strong outposts. Every crusade after that, there was like 9 or 11, something like that, was just an attempt to recapture these same territories from Muslim conquest and reconquest. The Crusades were only a localized threat in the Levant, and they didn't topple the Muslim empires, but they caused massive disruption to them and weaken them. So literally all of the Crusades were just about trying to get and keep Jerusalem, which had been taken from them a few centuries before. Okay, let's see. Then in 1258, the Mongols from Asia, having nothing to do with the Christians or the Muslims, under Huglu Khan, destroyed Abbasid Caliphate, ending the effective Abbasid rule. Around 1299, the Mamluks, which were Muslim, halted the Crusader and Mongol advances, and around the same time, the Ottoman Turks began to rise, conquering what was left of the Byzantine Empire. Once the Ottomans conquered the Mamluks in Egypt, the Ottoman Sultan, Selim I, took the Caliphate title, extending Ottoman control essentially to all, which were at this time scattered, Muslims in the region. The Crusades were Christian Europe's counteroffensive after 400 years of Muslim conquest that have taken formerly Christian lands, including Holy Land, Jerusalem, Palestine, North Africa, Spain, Sicily, and parts of Anatolia. I honestly don't know where Anatolia is. Let me find out. I'm guessing it's not somewhere that still exists, but Turkey. Okay, it's in Turkey. There we go. That makes sense. Anyway, the Ottoman Empire, now at its rise, beginning in 1299, that's what we just described, during its expansionist stage, which is from the 14th to the 17th centuries. So in the 13th century, they established and took about 100 years to continue getting established. And then in the 14th through the 17th centuries, they just expanded. And yes, that means that Muslims started the practice of colonizing, essentially. It was actually conquering and then colonizing, but it's not actually a Western European thing. Once again, waged aggressive wars to conquer Christian lands during its expansionist stage. Framed partly as jihad, but driven by imperial ambition, tribute, and strategic control. Yes, they literally started the colonizing and enslaving. In fact, by the 18th, 19th century Western slave trade, while still despicable, it's hard to see it as anything other than direct retaliation against the very people who had captured, marauded, and enslaved Europeans for the, 5, 6 centuries before that. Doesn't justify it, but it makes a little more sense. The conquest of the Balkans in the 14th and 15th century. So we just talked about, they did this expansion from the 14th through the 17th. This is a little bit more detail on that period of time. So from 14th to 15th century, they swept through Serbia, Bulgaria, Greece, and beyond. The Battle of Kosovo in 1389 and the fall of Constantinople in 1453 terrified Europe, leading to the failed Crusades. Sieges of Vienna in 1529 and 1683. The Suleiman besieged Vienna in 1529 but failed due to weather and logistics. In 1683, siege under Grand Vizier Kara Mustafa was a massive push into Central Europe. Ottoman forces reached the city gates, but coalition forces, the Holy League, mostly Poles, Habsburgs, and Germans, crushed them in the Battle of Vienna, marking the high watermark of the Ottoman expansion to Europe. Naval dominance and raids. They controlled the Mediterranean trade. Barbary crosshairs, Ottoman allied North African states, raided European coasts, enslaved European captives, and demanded tribute, meaning taxes, essentially, echoing the Barbary Wars, but more on that later. Other major clashes, the Battle of Lepanto, 1571, a Holy League naval victory that halted the Ottoman Mediterranean supremacy. Repeated Russo-Turkish wars in the 18th and 19th centuries, where Russia seized Crimea and pushed south, and the Crimean War, 1853 to 1856. Britain and France allied with the Ottomans against Russia to prevent Russian dominance, only to be stabbed in the back again by the Ottomans in World War I, which put the final nail in the deathbed of the Ottoman Empire. So, starting in the, I know I said 1st century, starting in the 5th century, at least as far as the history that is directly comparable to today, this started with Muslims coming and conquering infidels in North Africa or the southern Mediterranean, which at the time was Christian European, conquering, enslaving, plundering, followed by the Crusades, which aimed to take back control of just the Holy Lands, and ultimately failed, all of them. They, to somewhat success, they took them back for periods of time, but ultimately fell again to more Muslim conquest. And then the Ottomans came and took complete control of all of this area once again, including the Holy Lands and all of that, until World War I, when they attacked with the Axis powers. And once again, that was the final nail in the coffin, which led to Britain getting back control of what we now call Palestine and Israel. This did not start because white Europeans just went out to conquer and colonize everybody. That's not how this history began. But a lot of that's old history, okay? So, I'll summarize it in a minute. But what about our concern? Americans' concern? Well, I only care about American history as far as that goes. Once we became a new country, we separated ourselves from European history. So that's their history. What is ours? Before even becoming a nation, which happened in 1776, American businessmen, basically, I forget the correct term, but American businessmen who were merchants and sailors, were being attacked constantly, trying to get through the Mediterranean by the Barbary Muslim pirates. And by 1787, now that we're a country, we've established ourselves, Jefferson and Adams, well, let's get into the detail a little bit better, rather than me trying to say it off the cuff here, because I don't want to forget anything, and there's some really good parts to this story, too. The larger history of America's first confrontation with the Barbary pirates is a tale of young nations' defiance, religious justification for piracy, diplomatic shock, and eventual naval triumph that helped forge the U.S. Navy and assert our independence on the world stage. The young United States, fresh from our revolution in the 1780s, well, revolution in 1700s, or 1770s, I mean, but now in the 1780s, were faced with the brutal reality on the high seas. Without British naval protection, American merchant ships sailed defenseless into the Mediterranean. Barbary crosshairs from northern African states, Tripoli, Algiers, Tunis, and Morocco, raided them relentlessly, seizing vessels, cargoes, and crews. Sailors were enslaved, ransomed, or sold into brutal markets. These weren't random bandits. They were state-sponsored Muslim privateers operating under the rulers of the Pashas and the Ds, who demanded tribute for protection. So again, tribute is a tax. This is a tax that the Quran demands Muslims demand of non-believers in exchange for living in peace, essentially. And the idea is, if you are not in a position to just convert or kill the non-believers, then you can accept a tax from them to help you build into that position. That's the basic idea. European powers had long paid the annual tributes to avoid a tax. They had basically capitulated after years of being marauded, enslaved by these Muslims. But the new America, cash-strapped and proud, balked at the extortion. In 1785, Algerian pirates captured American ships like the Dauphin and the Maria. They enslaved 21 crewmen in horrific conditions, chained, starved, and diseased. In March 1786, Thomas Jefferson, who was our U.S. Minister to France at the time, and John Adams, who was U.S. Minister to Britain, met Tripoli's ambassador to London, Sidi Haji Abraham, to understand the attacks and to negotiate. The Americans asked directly, why attack a nation that has never harmed you? We see all mankind as friends until provoked. This really is our history. We really have been decent people the whole time. The ambassador's reply stunned them. He explained that it was rooted in the laws of their prophet, written in the Quran directly. Non-Muslims who refused to acknowledge Muslim authority were sinners. It was the right and duty of Muslims to wage war on them anywhere, plunder their goods, and enslave captives. Any Muslim killed in such holy warfare was guaranteed paradise. He added incentives. The first to board an enemy ship, for example, got an extra slave, and described terrifying tactics. Pirates leaping aboard with daggers in both hands and one in the mouth, striking fear so enemies would surrender immediately, and he believed that the devil aided their success. Shortly after, demands followed. Massive tribute for perpetual peace, $30,000 to Tripoli plus thousands for himself, or war would continue. Jefferson and Adams rejected it as outrageous. They reported the exchange to Congress, highlighting the religious bias for endless hostility unless tribute followed. So literally, as a brand new nation that has never done anything to these Muslim nations, they attacked, murdered, and enslaved our people. Bet you don't hear too much about that when we talk about slavery in the United States, huh? When we asked them why and made clear that we wanted nothing but peace, they demanded we pay them if we wanted peace or get none. We did not start this. They started it before we even formed as a nation. They started it with us before we even formed as a nation. Jefferson grew convinced, as I would expect him to, because that's my man right there. Paying tribute was futile and degrading, because it would be. It would invite higher demands and signal weakness. He advocated building a navy and fighting back, even proposing a multinational force, although Europe declined because they're pussies and always have been. Adams favored negotiation, but agreed tribute was unsustainable. Years passed, and under Presidents Washington and Adams, they reluctantly paid tribute to the secure treaties. But demands escalated. In 1801, newly inaugurated President Jefferson refused Tripoli's latest ultimatum. It went from $30,000 to now $225,000 plus ongoing payments. Pasha Yusuf Karamani responded by chopping down the American consulate's flagpole in Tripoli, the traditional Barbary declaration of war. Jefferson struck back decisively. He dispatched a naval squadron to the Mediterranean under the Commodore Richard Dale. This marked America's first overseas war and the birth of a fighting navy. Early clashes included the USS Enterprise, thrashing a Tripolitan crosshair without losing a man. This, by the way, gets into U.S. Marine history that they're very proud of. The war hit a fever pitch in late 1803. On October 31st, Captain William Bainbridge, which, by the way, there's an island named after him here in Washington State, commanding the powerful U.S. frigate USS Philadelphia, chased a Tripolitan vessel into shallow waters near Tripoli harbor. The ship struck an uncharted reef and ran hard aground, stranded and helpless. Tripolitan gunboats swarmed in quickly. They captured the Philadelphia intact along with its entire crew, 307 officers and men. Bainbridge and his sailors became prisoners, many later enslaved or held for ransom. The Tripolitans refloated the frigate and towed her proudly into the harbor as a major prize, a modern American warship that could repair, arm, and turn against the U.S. blockade. This was a disaster. The Americans couldn't ignore it. That's us. Commodore Edward Preble, leading the U.S. squadron, feared the Philadelphia would strengthen Tripoli's navy and serve as a blueprint for building more powerful ships. He needed her destroyed before that could happen. Enter Lieutenant Stephen Decatur, a bold young officer with ice in his veins. In early 1804, Preble approved Decatur's daring plan. They used a recently captured Tripolitan ketch, a small two-masted vessel, that the Americans had seized earlier. They renamed it the USS Intrepid in order to fit the mission's audacity. On the night of February 16, 1804, Decatur led 74 volunteers, mostly from the frigates Constitution and schooner Enterprise, into Tripoli harbor. Disguised as Maltese sailors to avoid suspicion from onshore batteries, they sailed the Intrepid right up to the Philadelphia under the cover of darkness. The Tripolitan guard aboard the captured frigate did not realize the danger until it was too late. Decatur then gave the order, "Board her." His men stormed over the rails and in minutes overwhelmed the small Tripolitan crew, killing or driving most overboard, and secured the ship without losing a single American sailor. They quickly spread combustibles throughout the Philadelphia and set her ablaze from stern to stem, and escaped back into the Intrepid. The Philadelphia burned furiously. Her anchor cable snapping as flames reached the powder magazines, she exploded in a spectacular fireball that lit up the harbor. Decatur's raiders slipped away unscathed amid the chaos. British Admiral Horatio Nelson later called it the most bold and daring act of the age. A brutal blockade of Tripoli followed, bombarding the city and starving its fleet. In 1805, the Marine William Eaton led a daring overland march with mercenaries and exiled brothers of Pasha, Hamet Karami, and they captured Derna. The famous shores of Tripoli in the Marine hymn threatening Tripoli from land. Faced with a naval bombardment, lost ships, and internal revolt, Pasha Yusuf sued for peace. The 1805 treaty ended tribute payments, freed captives for ransom, and secured safe passage for American ships. It was a stunning victory for a fledgling republic. This forgotten war proved America would no longer bow to extortion. It built naval tradition, inspired the Marine Corps hymn, and showed the world the young nation would fight for free trade and dignity, even against foes justified by faith and conquest. Jefferson's hard line had paid off. Tribute ended, and Barbary threat to U.S. commerce was broken. For now. Just a few years later, in 1815, the Muslims decided to start attacking American ships again. We'll get to that story here in just a second. All right, let's get back into it. All right, so where we left off, get this set back up here. Where we left off, Jefferson and Adams had gone over to Tripoli to ask the Barbary pirates, who were Muslim, why are you attacking American ships? We've never done anything to you. We're a brand new country, and we would like to operate and live in peace. And the envoy to Tripoli from the Barbary coast told him, this is our religion. You're infidels, and we are ordered by the Quran to kill you or to tax you. And so basically, you can bribe us, and we'll leave you alone for now. Jefferson didn't want to do that. Adams wanted to negotiate and see what they could work out. Ultimately, Washington and Adams reluctantly paid the $30,000 demanded, plus bonuses for the envoy, in order to allow U.S. ships to sail through the Mediterranean without being robbed and their crews being murdered or put into slavery, or sold into slavery, rather, by Muslim Barbary pirates. Jefferson finally had enough when he got into office, and they tried to raise the extortion price from $30,000 to $225,000, and so he sent the Navy, the Marines specifically, and won. We lost the Philadelphia, but then we're able to recover it. Well, we burned it, and ultimately won the effort and secured peace until, that was in 1805, until 1815, when the Muslims decided that they didn't want to live in peace anymore and they were going to start enslaving American merchant ships again. And that brings us to where we are now. The Second Barbary War, also called the Algerine War, or the U.S.-Algerian War, was a short, decisive smackdown in 1815, and that finally buried the centuries-old practice of the Barbary tribute, which is the tax or the extortion money, and piracy against American ships. It lacked the long sieges and heroic raids of the First War, but it showed a battle-hardened post-war of 1812, the U.S. Navy flexing its real muscle for the first time. Fresh off ending the War of 1812, in early 1815, America was done playing nice. During that conflict, the Barbary states, especially Algiers, had taken advantage of the chaos. With British blockades choking U.S. trade anyway, Algiers ramped up attacks, capturing American merchant vessels like the Edwin and enslaving their crews. The Dey of Algiers, the ruler, felt emboldened, backed loosely by Britain, and demanded tribute again. No more excuses. The young republic, flush with naval pride and congressional support, decided to finish the job that Jefferson had started. On March 3, 1815, Congress authorized President James Madison to use naval force against Algiers. Madison wasted no time. He sent a powerful squadron, 10 ships strong, including the heavy frigate USS Guerriere, which had 44 guns, Constellation, and others, under Commodore Stephen Decatur, the same legend who had burned the Philadelphia a decade earlier. A second, even larger force, under Commodore William Bainbridge, who was captured in the First War, trailed closely behind as backup. Over 1,200 sailors and Marines sailed from New York on May 20th, 1815, guns hot and ready for the Mediterranean. Decatur wasted not a single minute. His squadron intercepted the Algerian flagship Mashuda, also spelled Mashoda, off Cape Gata on June 17th. In a fierce skirmish, American gunners pounded the corsair vessel, killing the famed Algerian admiral Reis Hamidou, a top pirate leader, and capturing the ship along with hundreds of prisoners. Decatur's force then mauled other Algerian warships, sinking one and damaging several more. The Algerians lost dozens, had many killed, wounded, and over 480 captured in just days of fighting. By late June, Decatur's fleet anchored menacingly off Algiers harbor. Today, Omar Aga stared down overwhelming American firepower. No British help coming. No tribute to hide behind. Decatur dictated brutal terms. No more tribute ever. Full safe passage for U.S. ships, the immediate release of all American captives, mostly from the Edwin, plus $10,000 in compensation, which is nothing compared to the $225,000 a year, plus other bribes that they were demanding in tribute. In exchange, the U.S. would return the captured Algerian ships and prisoners. The Dey had no choice. He signed the treaty aboard the Guerriere on July 3, 1815. Decatur wasn't finished. He sailed on to Tunis and Tripoli, forcing similar no-tribute treaties from their rulers. Both released enslaved Europeans as well. They paid reparations for seized ships and promised to leave American commerce alone. The entire campaign wrapped in under 2 months. Swift, surgical, and humiliating for the Barbary powers. Now, this is not necessarily related, but it is a tragic side note in American history. The freed American captives never made it home. They sailed on the USS Impervier, which vanished in the Atlantic with all hands, probably due to a storm, adding a somber note to the victory. The Senate ratified the Algiers Treaty on December 5th, 1815. Algiers briefly tried to back out later, but combined British-Dutch bombardment in 1816 crushed their fleet for good. In a follow-up, U.S. squadron in 1816 locked in a permanent deal which was ratified in 1822. Tribute payments ended forever for America. Finally, we had to fight 2 wars and have hundreds of Americans enslaved in order to get there. And remember, we did nothing to start this. They did this, as the envoy to Tripoli said, because it was in the Quran. We did not start wars with Muslims. They started them with us for literally no reason. I mean, for them, their reason is that God told them to. But we did nothing except end it. This quick win cemented America's naval reputation worldwide, and European powers took notice. The upstart republic had stood up to the old pirates' ground and won. It marked the true end of the Barbary piracy in the Mediterranean for U.S. ships, boosted national pride in the era of good feelings, and proved the Navy could project power far from home. No more bowing to extortion, free trade earned by cannon fire. In total, for as much as we have recorded history, this began with Muslim conquest of the Christian West. Further, the last time Christians attempted to reclaim those territories unprovoked was the Crusades. Though they were originally Christian territories, and Muslim attempts to expand into Europe never stopped during this time, so it was as much about defense as it was reclaiming the Holy Lands. Remember, these areas, Jerusalem, Algeria, Turkey, North Africa, basically, these started as Christian land. They were taken in the 5th century by Muslim conquest because of the death of Muhammad. The only retaliation came centuries later as Muslims continued to try to conquer Europe in the form of the Crusades. After that point, Westerners have done nothing except defend themselves against attempted Muslim conquest. We did not start this, then or now. In every instance since the Crusades, Western Christians, have near entirely left Muslims alone until provoked and forced into war by attempted Muslim expansions. But even if we call all of that history a wash up until the beginning of America. And just say, look, it was a lot of back and forth. They did this, we did that, and it isn't super relevant to today's concerns anyway. And if we instead just started American histories, Muslims made us their enemy from our literal day one. They have sworn to destroy all of us. Never for anything that we did, but merely for existing and refusing to bow to Muslim rule. On the other end of the planet, mind you. What choice have they left us to ensure our continued safety and existence, except to ensure that they will never attain sufficient power to harm us again? Now, it's worth noting that some Muslims today largely do wish to live in peace with Christians. At the very least, they claim to and have for some time. Countries like the Saudis, UAE, India, etc. There remains a large number of what we call today Islamists, which would be radicals, basically, for lack of a better way to put it, who wish to restore the caliphate and rule once again, and who also believe that their job is to kill us or tax us until they have sufficient power to kill us. Iran has been at the center of this for about 100 years. The stronghold of the Islamist power. If Iran falls, the only thing that will be left are small fragmented groups like Hezbollah. Looking through this much longer lens, it's hard to see how this is anything but a good idea. It's also important to note because so many Americans are under this belief that this started recently, that this started with Israel, or this started with the uprising in the 70s, or this started with the creation of the Muslim Brotherhood, which essentially led to modern-day Islamists that want to create a new caliphate in 1928. That's not true. This started in the 5th century. It started for Americans in 1776, when Muslims started capturing and enslaving American merchant ships for doing nothing more than sailing peacefully through the Mediterranean and refusing to pay the tax, refusing to pay the, whatever it's called, tribute. We cannot live in peace with people that refuse to live in peace with us. And while I'm not in favor of starting this war with Iran, I also recognize that they call for our death for no reason other than we are not a Muslim country. And we are not part of the Muslim history. We are part of the Christian history. And that means you too, whether you like it or not, whether you're Christian or not. It is absolutely astounding to me that any American could see this as anything other than completely justified. Now, whether or not it's smart is a different conversation, but it is 100% justified. And anybody claiming otherwise is ignorant as shit. We have been dealing with this problem. We have been dealing with a group of people that wish us dead and intend to make it happen since 1776. And really, since, 536? Is that what the date was? Where did I start? 632. Sorry. 632. I don't know what more you could possibly need to know. Now, as far as specific tactical questions as to Iran today, does regime change work? No, historically it has not worked well at all. Do I believe that what Trump is doing right now is the same thing that Rhino is not the word I'm looking for. What's the neocons did with Iraq and Afghanistan? No, I don't believe it is. Now, I could end up being proved wrong about that. But I'm going to wait and find out because there's nothing I can do about it anyway. There's nothing any of us can do about it for at least 90 days from the start. That's how long Trump has before Congress has to approve. And I say that's how long, at minimum, he has earned from conservatives for us to shut the fuck up and give him a chance. The man has taken bullets twice and almost 3 times on our behalf. He has stood up to them trying to jail him, his family, murder him, his family, take his business, his legacy, smear him as a pedo, and all these other things. The least you could do is shut the fuck up long enough to at least give him the benefit of the doubt. And at the very least, not throw this fucking country under the bus. Not throw our soldiers under the bus. Like MTG, who is implying that our soldiers, either through intent or incompetence, blew up a little girl's school based on nothing except the word of the enemy. People that have sworn to kill and destroy us since the year 632 by any means necessary, and that includes propaganda. Maybe you should at least wait for the facts from a credible source. The fact is, when you have people that have sworn to kill you, you don't always get to choose when the right time is. No, I don't think that it's the best time to be trying to do this. No, I don't think regime change works. But I do think this situation is a little bit different. And I do think that the opportunity arose even if at the wrong time. And like I said at the beginning, if it turns out that Trump is telling the truth, and they were in fact going to attack us anyway, then all of it's irrelevant. We had to do what we had to do to protect ourselves, period. Maybe we should at least wait until we know that before we open our traps. But the Jews! I don't give a fuck about the Jews. And anybody that is sitting here spending all of their time screaming about the Jews is wasting their life. They're not behind every bad thing to ever happen. Not only is it statistically improbable, they don't have the capability. And just because something that we have done, in this case, Iran, aligns with what they want to do, does not mean we are doing it for them. It does not mean that they have forced our hand in any way. That clip from Rubio was taken completely out of context. I would play it, but many others have played it, so there's really no need for me to. So here's the deal. Just wait. You know what? Give it the 90 days. Give it the 90 days. That's way more time than Trump claims he needs. That's how much time we have to wait before anything can be done about it. Give it the 90 days before losing your ever-loving mind over it. If this surprises you at all from Donald Trump, then you weren't paying attention in the first place. He has been crystal clear about Iran since 2011. He has always felt this way. And even though I might disagree with it, I recognize that I voted for a man that felt this way and might do this. And while I'm opposed to any sort of extended intervention in Iran, as we were in Iraq or Afghanistan, I don't foresee that happening. And given the successful attack on Fordham and given the successful attack on Venezuela, neither of which got us dragged into a war like everyone claimed it was going to, I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, at least for that 90 days. You should too. You certainly shouldn't be jumping on foreign enemy propaganda because you're angry. I get it. One of the hard parts about being conservative is there is a diverse set of views, and we don't always all agree on the best moves. But look at it this way. Iran was the one hostile nation left in the Middle East. Now, you still have issues in Syria and Lebanon and stuff, but those are isolated to, independent groups within those countries. Iran was the one major power left, and they were the funder of most of those other groups. Most of the terrorism, suicide bombings, etc. that happens in Europe and in the United States. Even if this only sets them back from being able to wage war or terrorist campaigns 6 months or a year, then it was probably still worth it. If it sets them back longer than that, or, God willing, leads to a more stable Iran, this was worth every penny because it means we can actually get out of the Middle East and things won't go to hell. And I think that's what Trump's idea is. I think his idea was if we could take down Iran and get at least a semi-friendly, semi-stable government in there, whether or not he'll succeed is a different question, but if we could at least do that, then the Saudis, the UAE, the Syria, all the Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, all of those other countries in the Middle East, they can worry about the problems in the Middle East. And we can come back over here to our shores. For good. Well, not for good, but for an indefinite amount of time. I don't know if that's the case. I don't know if that's what's going to end up happening. But if it does, then I would damn sure agree that it was worth it. So I'm willing to wait and see and not criticize until the bad things actually happen. If Trump in 3 weeks announces that he's sending troops, I'll be right there with you. But I'm not going to spend the next 3 weeks prophesizing about what might happen or complaining about things that haven't happened. I'm going to give the guy I voted for the benefit of the doubt as long as those things haven't happened. And I'm certainly not going to complain about us attacking first until I know for a fact whether or not they were actually going to attack us. Because again, if they were about to attack us, we had no choice. It does not matter if it was a smart move or not. We had to act. And it's certainly smarter to attack first if we know it's coming. Because we all know what happened at Pearl Harbor when we didn't attack first. What's the point in having the best intelligence agency in the fucking world if we don't use it? All right. Enough complaining. Now, let's have a little bit of fun and watch some of the more delusional America haters out there. And, yeah, just laugh a little bit for the rest of the episode because I'm so frustrated getting on X the last few days to see so many people that I generally agree with and some that I don't generally agree with, but they claim they agree with, you know, my point of view. Be just as emotionally responsive as leftists drive me absolutely insane. Like, you can't even wait 24 hours, let alone a week, before you assess the situation and go, okay, this is what's going on. This is what was said. This is what actually has happened so far. I don't know, this isn't looking so good right now. Or, okay, it's looking like it might not be the worst thing in the world. But to just act like it's World War III, that's exactly what the left and the propaganda machines are trying to get you to do. Moving on. All right. Crazy white woman or crazy Asian dude? Or other crazy white woman. Let's see. Where is this guy? Is that what it's... I gotta find this guy. Hang on. So, just to be clear, this guy is not actually a history professor. He lives in Beijing, China. He is a CCP propagandist. But he's been going viral a lot the last few days, and it's rather hilarious because he's full of it. He sounds so smart, but he's full of it.
Asymmetry. All right, so what is asymmetry? Asymmetry means that the two sides are choosing to fight different wars using different techniques because one is much stronger than the other, okay? America is a great empire. It has unlimited resources. It has the USD. It controls the world, right? Iran is a country that has been under economic sanctions for the past 45 years. It's poor. Its technology is very limited, okay?
I love the excuse that they've been under economic sanctions. If not trading with one nation makes your country poor, your country probably sucks. We don't trade with the countries that we have sanctions against. It hasn't hurt us. That's a two-way, trade is a two-way street. And so if we put sanctions against Russia, that also means that we don't do trade. But that doesn't hurt us. People love, you know, they never mention that part, right? If your country, your economy, your system of government is so effective, it should be able to stand not doing business with 1 out of 193 countries.
But as we learn in this class, actually, those nations that are poor actually have more energy. They're more open, and they're more cohesive.
What does that even
So let me give you
mean?
an example. This is what we call the Shahad drones. Shahad drones. Each of these drones costs $50,000 at most, okay? At most. It can go as cheap as $35,000 US.
It's
but
at
one
least
of them is $50,000. As you can see.
And yeah, they're $50,000. They use moped motors, which means they're very loud, they're not stealthy, and they're also very slow. The way that they are able to occasionally get a successful hit is because they have to launch 50 of them and hope that that overwhelms whatever system is ready to take them down. Generally, well, let me let him finish, and then I'll tell you how he's full of it.
You can fit a lot of these drones to a truck that can go anywhere in Iran, and they can hide anywhere. All right? So the thing to understand is, first of all, these drones are cheap. They're easy to make. They make about 500 a day. Okay? And estimates are about.
They don't make 500 a day. I don't know exactly how many. I'll look it up here real quick. I promise you, they don't make 500 a day. They might have made 500 one day when they got everything ready to put them all together. They definitely do not make 500 a day. If they do, then they're even worse than what he's saying. World. All right, let me let him continue here.
There's 80,000 right now that the Iranians have. So they can go on for a long, long time. Okay, and 1,000.
Okay, so hold on. Sorry, I just want to write this down before he keeps going. I missed that number before. He claims that they're 50K to make. They have 80K. And they can make 500 a day. We'll come back to those numbers.
Right now that the Iranians have. So they can go on for a long, long time. Okay, and one of these drones, again, can knock out a desalination plant, it can knock out an oil field, it can knock out a hotel, it can do a lot of damage. Okay? And it's easily
not quite that much, but
transportable.
Yes,
you can hide it anywhere. You can use it from anywhere, okay? And that's what the Iranians are using as an offensive weapon. And how do the Americans defend against this? They use something called a THAAD, right? Right, guys? This is what they use. THAAD. THAAD stands for Thermal High Altitude Air Defense. And they also have like Patriot systems. There's a lot, okay? The thing that
notice what he just said there. High altitude. Keep that in mind.
That you need to know about the system is it's really expensive. This missile, guys, costs $1 million. $1 million. So there's this $50,000 drone coming your way, and you throw a $1 million missile at it, okay? And often these missiles miss, so you have to throw 2 or 3 missiles at it, okay? So you're spending $2 to $3 million on each $50,000 that the Iranians spend. That's kind of silly. Second thing you'll notice is that this thing is really big and really slow. And therefore, you can't really move it around. Therefore, it's pretty easy for the Iranians to...
Okay. So he said, this one, hold on, we're at 3 minutes. Okay. This one, look, it's on a truck. Notice that is a regular civilian truck meant for driving on concrete. And you can move it anywhere you want. This one, which is also on a truck and on a off-road vehicle that can go literally anywhere, damn near, obviously one this big can't go literally anywhere, but it can go damn near. That's the whole point of how we designed them. Big and slow and not movable. No, the whole point of these is we can move them wherever we want, fire, and leave. This truck goes about 60 miles an hour. Not the fastest in the world, but it's plenty fast enough.
Really move it around. Therefore, it's pretty easy for the Iranians to spot where this is and attack it. And then when these things blow up, that's a lot of money, guys. Okay?
Yeah.
Flexing.
You want to know how many they've blown up?
Okay? You see how big and powerful I am? Me! Okay? That's all it was. These weapon systems are designed to scare the crap out of you. They are designed to impress you. And as a result, they cost a lot of money, and they really don't do anything, all right? So that's the entire American military.
Whoa. They cost a lot of money, yes. But they don't do anything? Apparently I need to get myself a fake chalkboard, you know, a smart board or whatever they call them, to write on. They do their job. They're expensive, but they do their job.
It costs a lot, and it doesn't really do anything. And it's not resilient. It's not innovative. It's not open. All right? Also, the other thing I have to say this, okay, is if you look at the American military...
It's not innovative. It is literally the most cutting-edge technology, besides things that are still in development, that is fielded in any military.
It's corrupt. So this is really about corruption. What? So the Americans don't really care about winning a war. What they care about is spending as much money as possible, because then they get a cut. It doesn't make sense. Right? And that's why the Americans are in a situation as they are.
Okay. This is just one of many videos, but this one's really easy to disprove, too. You can see that he contradicted himself many times. He has to, because he has... I mean, I think he does know exactly what he's talking about, but I think he's intentionally trying to lie to you. But let's do some basic math, and then we'll talk about facts. U.S., so he claims the drones cost $50K. Okay? Patriot missile, or THAAD missile, $1 million. Or $3 million, because you need to fire 3, supposedly, at a Shahed drone. Again, we'll get to facts in a minute, but taking his math, U.S. GDP, and in turn, our ability to spend on our military, is 60 to 1. What Iran's is. 60 to 1. Just double checking my math real quick. Do you have any idea? I thought so. What 3 million to 50,000 is? Meaning if we spent 3 million for to take down every $50,000 drone? 60 to 1. That means we would be spending equally. We could employ that system as often as they employ those drones, because we have that much more money than them. So it's irrelevant. Even with his numbers, which are absolute garbage, it is expensive. It does cost $1 million a missile, but we'll get to it in a second. It's irrelevant. We can afford to spend that much because we make that much more. Hey, but we're also not that stupid either. So, real quick, I wanted to check, and I know I said I was going to do it during the video, and then I didn't. I wanted to check. He said that they made 80,000 of them, and they can make 500 a day. Well, first of all, they certainly aren't making 500 a day anymore, are they? Second, how many Shahed drones does Iran have? They only had about 3,000 missiles before the 12-day war last year, and Israel took out an estimated 1,000. We believe they had about 2,000 missiles and rockets left. That's short, mid, and long range. They had a few long range. They're not intercontinental ballistic missiles. Otherwise, we would have to worry about them here. But they had some long range that could go as far as, I think, Israel. Yeah, Israel. Let's see. Oh, look at that. It's Iran that claimed they had 80,000. Not anybody that has any credibility. Claims that Iran holds up to 80,000 Shahed loitering munitions and can produce hundreds daily, suggest a shift toward industrial-scale drone warfare capable of reshaping deterrence, yada yada. Yeah, but the question is, do they actually? And as you can see here, so hold on, let me switch this over to the other browser so you can actually see this with me. Give me 1 second. You can actually see the moped motor on this one. There you go. So this is what they look like. Little tiny Chinese moped motor on the back there. Claims Iran possesses a stockpile of 80,000 combat-ready Shahed loitering munitions supported by alleged production tempo of 400 units per day. So, some quick back of the matchbook cover math here. It took them 200 days to stockpile 80,000. You would think they would have more than that if they could turn out that many. Let's see. They've elevated Tehran's unmanned aerial warfare capability. The assertion gained prominence following a widely circulated report declaring breaking Iran now has 80,000 drones, 400 a day, with Russia reportedly helping boost production, a claim that if operationally accurate would place Iran. I promise you, if they were able to turn out that many at that price, Russia and China would be doing the same with the exact same model. And yes, they started making these. They're not churning out those numbers. And Russia and China are far more capable at successful manufacturing than Iran ever was. Now, let's see. Is this actually going to tell us something accurate? Ukrainian provide essential operational context regarding the employment of the Shahed-derived system. Zelensky, Russia has about 500 drones, Iranian drones. Each day, dozens of missiles, ballistic missiles, highlighting sustained temperature and platforms are deployed at industrial scale. The operational perspective was reinforced further. Production of Iran is 1,000 a day. Claimed combat range, 2,000 kilometers, about 1,000 miles, with a 40 to 50 or basically 100-pound warhead. There are a couple bigger ones as well that are believed to have like a 500-pound. Estimated unit cost from 20 to 193,000. As you can see, like we don't have great information. We can only go off what they say, and we clearly don't believe what they say. An annual output, if they can make 400 a day, would exceed 146,000 units. And there's just no way, not with their constrained economy. They can never achieve anything close to that. Okay, this website is not doing me anything, though, to tell me. Actually have. So far, they had fired 1,000 of them prior to this engagement, far short of 80. Max speed, 115 miles an hour, 1,500 mile range. You can see the rest of the details there. It's a little faster than I thought, but not much. It's still well below like World War II plane speed. Range 1,250. Okay, but how many do they have? All right, so basically there's just no confirmation other than Iran's claim of 80. But it's just a meaningless number. It's entirely meaningless. So take it for what it's worth, but regardless. So his claim was that we have to use $1 million missiles from the THAAD to hit these 155 or 115 mile an hour drones. That's not what the THAAD is for. The THAAD is for taking down intercontinental ballistic missiles and high-altitude hypersonic missiles. That's what the THAAD is for. Like he said, the thermo high-altitude, whatever, I forget what it stands for, but high-altitude is in there. That's where the H comes from. Drones aren't high-altitude. They're actually very low-altitude. It literally looks like an RC plane flying over you because it essentially is. They are smart munitions for a country that has very limited resources. They're not... You could shoot them down with a rifle, okay? Literally. You can shoot them down with a rifle. The way that they hope to get them past... And by the way, so that's the THAAD system. We also have the Patriot system, which is cheaper. Not considerably. It's still expensive. But it's cheaper. And that is for short to medium range missiles. Now, keep in mind, a missile is going between 2,000 and 5,000 miles an hour. 2,000 to 5,000 miles an hour. Compared to 115. We don't use THAADs or Patriots to shoot down Shaheeds. Now, have we launched a Patriot? We don't use THAADs at all because those are high altitude. Have we launched a Patriot at a Shaheed? Maybe. If that's the only defensive weapon that we have in the area and nobody's got a rifle handy, then yeah, we'll launch a missile at it because, again, we can easily afford to. It's not at all a problem. We can throw up $3 million worth of missiles every time they can throw up $50,000 worth of drone. That's how much richer we are than Iran. Regardless, we primarily use 20 millimeter cannons to shoot them down. We have, the ships have minigun style 20 millimeter cannons that are AI driven on the front, and they shoot them down with bursts. They're essentially like miniguns. They shoot them down with bursts. And then the F-22 Raptor has a 20 millimeter Vulcan cannon on the front, similar to the A-10. You know, the bzz, or whatever. Can't make the noise, but the burr. There we go. And then the F-35 has a 25 millimeter Vulcan cannon on the front. That's how we shoot these down primarily. That's how we have been shooting them down. Because they're slow, dumb, and easy to target. They're also very loud and produce a big signature on radar. We have no problem seeing these. Now, what does make them dangerous, I'm not saying that they're not an effective weapon, because they are, but they're pretty expensive for a place like Iran to field, because they have to throw 100 at a single target in hopes that we don't have enough aircraft in the air to shoot down all 100 before they get to the target. And we usually don't. But we also generally have stationary, and as a last resort, there's usually a Patriot battery around too. I believe I have seen, well, I know that I have seen, and so I believe there has been two Shaheeds that have made it to their target. The rest were missiles. And only like 10 strikes so far. Out of the 2,000 missiles they supposedly had, out of the 80,000 Shaheeds they supposedly had, they have successfully landed about 12 combined. That's it. Further, Patriots and THAADs are not the only anti-air rockets that we have, or anti-missile rockets. We also have Tamirs, the same thing that is part of the Iron Dome system. It was a joint effort between the U.S. and Israel. You know how much those cost per rocket? $50,000. $50,000. The same amount as that. I I know you can't see it, but I'm still looking at the picture of the drone. Don't buy this propaganda. It's nonsense. And no matter how smart it might sound, believe me, our military has thought about it. We're not stupid enough to think that we can afford to throw a $4 million missile at every $50,000 drone. These go slower than World War II planes. We can shoot them out of the sky with guns. In fact, a regular SAW squad automatic weapon would probably shoot it down just fine. The only problem with that is it still usually ends up detonating on the ground, just not where it was supposed to. So you got to be careful where you do that. That's why it's better to do it with a plane, because you can usually get it to blow up in the air with the explosive 20 millimeter rounds. Nonetheless, it is fun to see the impeccable levels of cope that these American haters have to go to in order to justify their absolute just burning hatred of America. It feels good. I won't deny it feels good. It just does. Let's move on to the next one. I'm going to play one more of his, and then we'll go on to, because he's been posting a ton lately. I think he thinks that all the views are getting his propaganda out there, but in reality, it's mostly just laughing at him. But whatever. I don't mind laughing at him. I'll give him a view to laugh at him. Let's see what else we got here. He tries to play it like he's neutral, too. It's really funny. So hold on here, I'm trying to find. So that was number 9. He's got number 10 here on the laws of asymmetry. So let's try that one. Gosh, it's way too long. Let me see if there's a clipped version.
This war, it is the end of the world. Okay?
Okay, that's a good place to start. Let's see whether or not this war is the end of the world.
So as you can see from this map, this war, it is the end of the world. Okay? Both sides have the potential to destroy each other.
The U.S. absolutely has the potential to destroy Iran. Which our goal isn't to destroy Iran, it's just to destroy the Muslim rule in Iran. Not the Muslims, the Muslim rule. Iran can't even come close to destroying us, as I demonstrated in the video I uploaded yesterday, which you should go watch. It's called Delusion. And we tackle another idiot like this and break down exactly how Iran's nuclear option, as he put it, wouldn't even come close to putting a dent in the American fleet.
It's really a question of how far do they want to go. All right? We can also say this is...
Okay, so Iran can destroy us. It's just a question of they don't want to. They just don't want to. That's all.
Almost a game of chicken. Okay? We can blow each other up. How far do you want to go? And the problem is this. The problem is that the Iranians are Shia, which believes in martyrdom. And you've killed the religious leader, the Ayatollah Khamenei. So they're willing to go very, very far. The GCC countries are Muslim, but they're materialistic. They love money. And also, most of the population are expatriates, foreigners. 90% of Dubai are foreigners. Guess what's going to happen if they suffer? They're going to run away. Okay? So this is not a fair.
What's his name? Doesn't live in Dubai. I forget his name. That guy. He doesn't live in Dubai. He visited Dubai. Probably does often. He's got the money to.
So this is not a fair matchup. The big question that people have is, first of all, are the Americans going to use ground troops? Because the only way that you can defeat Iran is by using ground troops, okay? That's a big question we will look at over the next few weeks. Will America send its army, 500,000, 2 million soldiers to topple the government? Okay, that's question number one. Question number two, nuclear weapons. If you're losing a war, would you choose to use nuclear weapons? Okay, that's another big question that we have, okay? Now, another big question that we have is who gets involved? Because this situation is so dire that Europe, okay?
I'll tell you one thing. Russia and China aren't coming to your defense.
Specifically Germany, France, and Britain are talking about entering this war. And guess what? If that happens, it is possible that Russia and China will also enter this war on the side of the Iranians. This is World War III, okay? Because of the importance of the Strait of Hormuz, because of the importance of the Middle East, everyone has to get involved at some point.
Okay, that was just painful to watch. We'll see if there's one other, but that was that one's not even coping. That's just straight like delusion. That's just straight delusion. Pax Islamica. We'll see here. That's asymmetry. We watched that one. Let's see what command and control means.
The Iranians see this as a religious war. Yeah, and so the Iranians have announced total war. Okay? And so what this means is that right now command and control in Iran is decentralized. There's no one person telling everyone what to do.
It's because they're all dead.
Region has its own orders, has its own strategy. And so if you knock out Tehran, everyone else keeps on going. So if you take off the head, it doesn't change anything.
First of all, he's circling places like Israel, Kuwait. He circled Iran, and I can't see what the other one was. Pakistan, maybe? Bahrain?
Unfortunately, the Israelis and Americans use this as a military doctrine. Military doctrine just means how you design your...
Shock and awe is not our military doctrine.
Or military for what purpose. And so...
I'm starting to wonder, like, this guy is making me wonder, do the Chinese really, like, do they really think this? Or do they really think we're convinced by this terrible propaganda? Do they really think that shock and awe, which was a propaganda term that our government used to, make Americans feel better about going into Iraq, and retaliation for 9/11 because we were angry about it? That's not our military doctrine.
Even though the Americans seem like an invincible army, they are not equipped to fight a 21st century war.
Literally nobody but America is equipped to fight a 21st century war. We had to start up old munitions factories on behalf of Ukraine because Russia had to invade with 1970s equipment. China just tried to field their latest warship, immediately had to put it back in port. It runs on diesel. Our ships have run off nuclear since the 50s. Ay, ay, ay.
Against drones, against destabilization, against religious fanatics. Okay, they're just not. All right. But unfortunately, because of military doctrine,
his problem is he's trying to start from the point that America is incompetent and then build from there. And it doesn't work. Because even if you don't like us, you still can't dictate that we're incompetent.
they're going to keep on attacking Tehran. Now, the great irony of all this is that the Iranians who will be most supportive of you, of regime change, are actually in the cities because they are educated, they're progressive. The people who are most fundamentally against you, will fight you to the death, are religious fanatics, the Shia militants, living in the rural areas. Okay?
Yeah, except we're not attacking the cities. We're attacking military strongholds, some of which are in Tehran and in the cities. We're not bombing the whole city.
So this is a really silly thing where you are actually destroying those who will most likely support you, and you're leaving alone those who are most likely to commit jihad against you.
All right, that's enough of that idiot. I don't know what to, like, I'm not an expert on any of this. He's just full of it. Full of it. And, like, the coping level from this group of people, because it's not just him, is so insanely dystopian that you almost feel bad. I don't know. I do worry. What I worry about most is the fact that we are not as righteous of a country as we once were. And the more we lose that, the more we lose our way. The more we lose our advantage as well. And I think that's something we ought to consider. Oh, okay. I said I was done with this idiot, but according to this, it says Professor Zhang made 3 predictions and 2 have come to fruition. America will lose to Iran. I gotta see this one. I want to see what 2 have supposedly come to fruition.
You made 3 big predictions. 1, that Trump would win. 2, that he would start a war with Iran. And 3, that the U.S. would lose that war. Quite a stunning prediction. You know, do you stand by it?
The reality is that right now, it's a war of attrition between the United States.
What is a war of attrition, guys? Ukraine and Russia is a war of attrition. This war has been going on for 2 days. Well, 4 days at the most. I think it's 3 or 4. I don't know. I didn't count. The definition of attrition is literally a rubbing away or wearing down by friction, a gradual reduction in number or strength because of stress or military action, or a gradual reduction in personnel or membership because of resignation, retirement, or death, meaning like natural death, often viewed in contrast to the reduction from layoffs. What does that mean? It means a meat grinder. It means whoever runs out of money first, or bodies, essentially. Ukraine and Russia is a war of attrition. This war has been going on for 3 or 4 days. It is decisively in the hands of America, as it was probably always going to be.
And Iran, and the Iranians have been preparing 20 years for this conflict. And now they have a pretty good strategy of how to weaken and ultimately destroy the American empire. So what the Iranians are doing is they're waging war against the entire global economy. And so they are striking the GCC countries. They're going after the critical energy infrastructure. They blocked off the Strait of Hormuz. And eventually, they will go after the water desalination plants, which is the lifeblood of these nations because they don't have fresh water supply. The Iranians are actually threatening the very existence of Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar. And why this is important is that the Gulf states are really the linchpin of the American economy. So what they do is they sell petrodollars and then they recycle the petrodollars back into the American economy through the investments in the stock market. And right now, we know that the entire American economy is propped up by AI investments in data centers. And a lot of that comes from the Gulf states. So if the Gulf states are no longer able to sell oil and they're no longer able to finance AI, this AI bubble in the United States, then this AI bubble will burst, and with it will burst as well the entire American economy, which is really a financial Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, sir, an Amazon data center was literally hit in the UAE. Now, we also wanted to talk to you about munition. The United States is racing to accomplish Iran mission before munitions run out.
The United States military is not designed to fight a 21st century war. Remember, the military-industrial complex came to being after World War II, and it's designed to fight the Cold War. And the Cold War was really about muscle flexing, who was to first get the person on the moon. And so the entire American military strategy revolves around very sophisticated technology that costs a lot of money to build. And that's what the American air defense system is. And that's why we're seeing this asymmetry in this war, where you have these $1 million missiles trying to take out these $50,000 drones. And it's not sustainable in the long term. And so what we're seeing is really the puncturing of the aura of invincibility that sustained American hegemony for the past 20 years.
So the thing is, there is an asymmetry in the war, but that's because Iran has no choice. Now, if Iran had the same amount of money as the U.S. and we're choosing to use these cheaper means, that might be a real concern. But it's not. Again, we're 60 times richer. For every $50,000 drone they throw up, we could use a $3 million missile to shoot it down. But we're not. We're using far cheaper means to shoot down these stupid drones. He did make one point that was correct. We have a lot of money tied up in really sophisticated technology. And it's not really the money. It's the amount of time it takes to produce this sophisticated technology. And I've mentioned this before, and it's a concern that I have. It's a concern that the military is finally becoming aware of and hopefully going to make a change. We'll see. But what won us World War II was not the best technology. Germany had the best technology in World War II. One of Germany's biggest problems is they very quickly ran out of that technology and had to start branching off into all kinds of freshly made new developments because that high tech took a long time to produce and they were going through it faster than they could produce it. It wasn't just the money. The money wasn't that big of an issue. It was an issue, but it wasn't that big of an issue. But it was the time. And this is a concern I have had about America. Because we've been trying, in order to stay out of sustained engagements, we needed high technology in order to have very precision strikes and reduce collateral damage and be able to, take out a single house in a block or even a single car driving down the street without harming anybody else around. And we can successfully do that. It's impressive. But it's expensive and it is time consuming. So now we have a lot more missiles than, there is a concern. We do need to ramp up production, but it's not nearly as big a concern as they're making it to be. We make about 50 of the Patriot, or not the Patriot, the THAADs a month, but I don't know how many we've shot, but it can't be many because Iran hasn't used very many high altitude ballistic missiles. Patriots, we make about 600 a month, and we probably have shot between 200 and 500 of those. So we're well within what we can produce. And stockpiles are estimated at 13,000 of those, by the way. So we're not running out tomorrow or anything. And again, the cost is no concern. We could afford to use those for every $50,000 drone if we wanted to, but we don't need to because we have better options. We use those for much more expensive missiles. Now, what won us World War II was the fact that we produced good technology, good enough technology, quickly. Because in a war, that matters. The more people you can get onto the battlefield quicker, and the more you can replace diminishing stockpiles quicker, logistics tends to be what wins wars. Logistics literally is what wins wars. And it's something that the American military has always been good at. But we're not particularly good at on the manufacturing side right this minute. And that is due to NGOs and environmental nonsense. And that needs to be fixed. We literally have 0 plants that produce TNT. We will theoretically have 1 by 2030. TNT is still the most used, one of 2 most used explosive munitions in the military, in these missiles and rockets and all of that. We have to get our TNT from Poland right now, as does basically every other nation. Why? Because environmental law like the CAA made it virtually impossible for anyone to profitably or effectively run a TNT plant. And that's why the one plant that we are going to build by 2030 is being built by the military, not by private industry. Because private industry can't. It's not profitable to. We could fix that tomorrow by just excusing these industries from being able to be sued by leftist NGOs, most of which are funded by foreign enemies, because that's what stops almost every major project in the United States, private or public, is that these leftist NGOs can sue for the dumbest reason, including a period that is not in place on paperwork, and hold these things up, cost them millions of dollars in court fines and lawyers and all of that for decades sometimes. All we have to do is excuse them from that, and we'll have 50 TNT plants by next week. Now, just because we excuse them from these absurd laws like NEPA that shouldn't exist in the first place, and thankfully is finally starting to be corrected, but not completely yet, like the reversal of the endangerment finding, which still now has to go through millions of dollars in court battles because leftists don't want to let go of control that they have seized. Just because we excuse them from it doesn't mean that they can just pollute whatever pollutants come out of a TNT factory all over the place. We can still make sure that they do these things cleanly without these ridiculous hurdles that stand in the way, and make it cost insane amounts of money and take ridiculous amounts of time. Believe it or not, it's actually a big money loss to these companies to make dangerous plants, because they lose a lot of money in lawsuits, aside from down production time and all sorts of other things. Businesses have learned that it's far easier to just make better choices. Yes, at one point in time, when there were little rules and little oversight, some businesses took advantage. It still was never the vast majority, but some took advantage. And yes, that needed to be corrected, but we way overcorrected because the goal in those overcorrections was not actually fixing the problem. It was undermining the American middle class and economy. So, we need to fix these problems. We need to also change our actual military doctrine, which is not shock and awe, a little bit, because we do need the high-tech stuff. But we don't need to rely on the high-tech stuff. We also need a good supply of good enough stuff that can be produced very quickly. Because honestly, we could probably produce a rocket battery that is virtually as capable of taking out incoming missiles as a Patriot or a THAAD with $10,000 rockets instead of $1 million rockets. The difference is it might take 10 of the $10,000 rockets instead of 1 or 2 of the $1 million rockets. But 10 of them is still only $100,000. Why wouldn't we do that? Aside from the fact that you have these $50,000 drones that we could knock out with a rifle, we ought to be able to take it out with a pretty cheap munition pretty easily. So yeah, we do have a little bit of a problem of making the same mistake that Germany did, which is just because we can doesn't mean we should all the time. And we need to address that and change our doctrine a little bit in order to match with what has always won us wars in the past. Granted, we're not in a war right now. We haven't been for a long time, and that's part of the reason it hasn't been a concern. But we don't have a bunch of manufacturing in America anymore. And that's another reason we won World War II, because we already had all the manufacturing facilities. All we had to do was retool them. And that's a big difference, because the machinery in a factory cannot just be made overnight. That takes time. And that's why the tariffs were so important, because that manufacturing does need to happen here. We need to do stuff like make chips here. We have to. Because if we don't, we won't be able to produce our own guided missiles, for example, or guided rockets, without relying on, right now we're relying on Taiwan for chips. And that is just moronically stupid. I believe that is the reason that China actually wants Taiwan, by the way. I don't think they give a crap about Taiwan. I think there's a little bit of a, it stings because that should be ours, but it's not anymore. But they want the chip machines. If they take Taiwan, they think they'll get the chip machines. They've tried to replicate it. They can't. They don't know how. We need to get those in America where they're safe. And where they can be utilized for war effort if necessary. Because believe it or not, there are people out there that want to kill us. And while we certainly could ramp up if a war began, it's not going to be as easy without the manufacturing facilities already in place to simply retool. And that is a big problem. Much bigger than the government would like us to believe. Don't forget to check us out on X. Please like, follow, share the show, all that good stuff. X.com/JBU_show, Patreon.com/JBU.Show. Yeah. And don't forget to check out my co-host, Austin from the Miller Talk podcast, millertalk.substack.com. I appreciate you guys watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the... I always get that wrong. There we go. Hopefully you enjoyed the history lesson tonight. And hopefully it enlightened you a little bit as to where exactly all of this comes from. We did not start this. We have not even continued it. when somebody swears to end you over and over and over, they leave you no choice but to end them first. What else are we supposed to do? I don't like it either. I don't want to have to do it either. But I don't know what else we're supposed to do. All right, guys. With that, my name is Chris. This has been the JBU Show.